Come
So,
on in, Chet. Yeah, come on.
in other words, when Mike talked to me, I think about 20 years ago, I was living in Haiti. I was working in an outlying hospital in the community known as Dessalines. One of my jobs was to supervise and be involved in the community health work of the hospital. From time to time, that would mean leaving Dessalines to go to St. Mark for a Ministry of Health meeting. One time I was returning to the hospital in Uttley from one of those meetings, and I was driving the mission car, which was very conspicuous because it was a nice vehicle. It wasn't my own personally. And in the car with me was the Haitian chaplain from the hospital, because he would go with me to make sure that the translation piece was totally covered. We were about ready to turn off the national highway to head onto the rather rustic road into Dessalines, and there were men standing in the road ahead, and the only way to avoid hitting them was to stop the car. There was no way to get around them. And there were probably a dozen plus or minus men. So we stopped, and it wasn't uncommon in those days for people to set up random roadblocks to hold people up for money. And I suspected that's what was going on. So I turned to my friend in the car and I said, "We need to pray," and stopped the car and rolled my window down just 2 or 3 inches, thinking, well, I can talk to him, but I'm safe. And he sounded and smelled and moved like he had been drinking. He wanted money, and I said I had none, which was the truth. But we had stopped on the way back from the meeting to buy some meat at the butcher shop, and so I offered that to him, and he was insulted. He felt like if I was driving a car like that, I must be wealthy. And I said, this isn't my car. We're returning to the hospital in Dessalines. He wasn't very happy with that. Somehow he managed to get his fist through the door, and he was holding a machete. And within moments of all this, it wasn't touching me, but it was so close I could sense that it was right next to me. And I was just in my spirit crying, Lord, I'm so helpless here. And I don't honestly remember what all was said between us, but he pulled his hand out and motioned me off in frustration, and I left. And by then, I'm sure my adrenaline was probably racing through my veins. Pulled into the yard where I lived. It was about lunchtime, and I knew I needed a chance to kind of catch my breath and regroup before heading back to the hospital. And some other missionaries that lived there walked out on the porch as they heard my vehicle come in, and they said, "What happened?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, about 30 minutes ago, we just had this overwhelming sense that we needed to pray for you. And we were just crying out to God to do whatever you needed." And I just got goosebumps, and I do right now just telling the story, because I realized that their timely prayer was what saved my life. And that's when I started looking back and realizing, whoa, that could have ended very differently. Being in that kind of situation was nothing I really thought ahead about. But I will never forget that. Those prayers and Jesus, I really think without them, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the story.